The morning of my 50th birthday began like any other. Alarm blaring at 5:30 a.m., the scent of cheap coffee brewing in my ancient drip machine, and the quiet hum of the city still half asleep outside my apartment window. I dressed in my usual uniform, steel-toed boots, faded work slacks, and a company polo that had seen better days. The embroidered logo of Dawson Steelworks was fraying at the edges, just like my patience after 23 years on the factory floor. I didn't expect balloons or fanfare. Birthdays had stopped mattering a long time ago, especially after the divorce and the years of being passed over for promotions in favor of men with half my experience. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't hope for at least a grudging acknowledgement. From my team, maybe a card signed with misspelled names or a stale donut left on my desk. Instead, I walked into the plant to find my staff huddled in clusters, their whispers cutting off as I passed. Then I saw him. Daniel Carter, the 35-year-old wunderkind who'd been handed the operations manager job 6 months ago, was leaning against my office doorframe like he owned the place. His tailored suit probably cost more than my monthly rent, and his smile was all teeth, no warmth. "Ah, Linda, perfect timing," he said, clapping his hands like he was summoning a dog. "Team meeting in 5, big announcements." I should have known, right then. The conference room was packed, every chair filled with nervous junior engineers and line supervisors who wouldn't meet my eyes. Daniel stood at the front, clicking through a PowerPoint slide titled, "Future Forward Efficiency." The first bullet point, workforce optimization. My stomach dropped. "Linda," he said, finally looking at me, "we're restructuring. Your role as senior floor supervisor is being phased out, effective immediately." Silence. Someone coughed. The intern from HR, a kid who still had acne, slid a severance packet across the table toward me. Daniel kept talking, something about new directions and streamlined leadership. But all I could focus on was the date stamped on the termination papers. June 14th, my birthday. The irony was almost poetic. I didn't scream, didn't throw anything, just folded the papers neatly and stood up. "You're making a mistake," I said, calm as a frozen lake. Daniel smirked. "We'll manage." That's when I decided to stop managing too, because what Daniel didn't know, what none of them knew, was that for the past 18 months, I'd been quietly buying up Dawson Steelworks debt through a shell corporation. A few favors called in from old industry contacts, a second mortgage on my condo, and a stubborn refusal to let this place rot under idiots like him. The papers had been signed the night before. By midnight, I'd owned 51% of the company, but I let Daniel have his moment, let him strut out of the room like he'd just won something. The drive home from Dawson Steelworks was eerily quiet. No angry phone calls, no frantic texts, just the hum of my old pickup's engine and the occasional honk from impatient city traffic. I rolled down the window, letting the warm June air rush in, carrying the distant scent of fried food from a corner diner. It was the kind of day that should have felt heavy with loss. But all I could think about was the look on Daniel's face when he realized what he'd done. I pulled into my parking spot outside my apartment building, a modest brick complex that had seen better decades. The elevator was out of order, again, so I took the stairs, my boots echoing against the concrete steps. By the time I reached my floor, my phone had finally buzzed. A single message from Marlene, my oldest friend, and the only person at Dawson who'd ever had my back. He's already telling everyone you took it well. Asshole. I snorted, typing back one-handed as I unlocked my door. Wait till he finds out how well. My apartment was small but meticulously organized, a habit from years of troubleshooting chaos on the factory floor. I dropped my keys into the ceramic bowl by the door, a gift from my daughter Emily, back when she still thought I'd retire someday, and headed straight for the fridge. Behind a half-empty carton of orange juice was a bottle of cheap champagne, the kind with the twist-off cap. I'd bought it 3 weeks ago as a joke for myself. Celebrate the Big Five Neo, I'd thought. Maybe things will finally turn around. Popped the cap, took a swig straight from the bottle and dialed a number I knew by heart. 2 rings. Then, Linda, I was wondering when you'd call. Victor Chen, my ex-husband, my occasional pain in the ass, and, more importantly, the best corporate lawyer in the state. Papers are signed? I asked, kicking off my boots. As of 11:47 p.m. last night. You're officially the majority shareholder of Dawson Steelworks. Congratulations, boss. His voice was dry, but I could hear the smirk. You gonna tell them today? I sank into my couch, the springs groaning under my weight. Nah, let them enjoy their victory lap. Because here's the thing about people like Daniel. They're so busy being the smartest guy in the room, they never stop to check if the room's on fire. The knock at my door came just as I was finishing the champagne. I knew who it was before I looked through the peephole. Marlene stood there, still in her Dawson coveralls, her gray braid coming undone at the end of a long shift. In one hand, she held a grocery store cake with "Happy Birthday" scrawled in loopy frosting. In the other, a 6-pack of beer. You're an idiot, she said by way of greeting, shoving the cake into my hands. I grinned. Miss me already? She stalked past me into the apartment, dropping onto the couch with a groan. That little shit had the nerve to call a team morale meeting after you left. Sat there grinning like he'd just invented the assembly line. She cracked open a beer, took a long swig, and glared at me. So? When do we strike? I grabbed a beer for myself, pried off the cap with my keys, and settled beside her. Monday. Marlene's eyebrows shot up. You're gonna let them stew all weekend? Yep. I took a sip, savoring the bitter tang. Let Daniel think he's won. Let him start changing shit. Let him dig his own grave. Because here's what Daniel didn't understand. Dawson Steelworks wasn't some spreadsheet to optimize. It was a living, breathing beast of a place, full of people who knew its rhythms better than their own heartbeats. And if you yanked out the wrong gear, say, the senior floor supervisor who'd kept Line 4 from exploding for a decade, the whole machine would start to scream. By Monday, it'd be screaming loud enough for everyone to hear. The last text of the night came from Emily. Happy birthday, Mom. Call me tomorrow? I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. I could have told her then, could have said, guess what? I just bought the company that fired me today, but some surprises are worth waiting for. I typed back, will do, love you. Then, I turned off the lights, lay back in the dark and smiled. Monday was going to be fun. Monday morning arrived with the kind of oppressive summer heat that clung to your skin like a second layer of clothing. I dressed deliberately, same steel-toed boots, same faded work slacks, but this time with a crisp white blouse I'd bought. Years ago and never worn. No company polo today. Not ever again. The parking lot of Dawson Steelworks was half empty when I pulled in at 6:15 a.m., earlier than most of the day shift. Security guard Pete, a grizzled Vietnam vet who'd worked the gate since before I started, did a double take when I walked past. Linda? He squinted at me like I was a ghost. The hell you doing here? I flashed my old keycard, still active because no one in HR had bothered to deactivate it. Just picking up some things. The plant floor was eerily quiet without the usual pre-shift bustle. My office had already been cleared out, the desk wiped down, my nameplate replaced with a glossy new one. Tyler Reeves, Assistant Operations, Manager. Some fresh-faced kid Daniel had probably plucked straight out of business school. I didn't linger. Just grabbed the last of my personal items, a framed photo of Emily's graduation, a stress ball shaped like a gear, and headed for the break room. That's where I found the first cracks. Marlene was hunched over the industrial coffee maker, muttering curses as she jabbed at the controls. Piece of shit won't. She spotted me and froze. You've got some nerve showing up here. Missed. The coffee. I said, nodding at the machine. New policy. Only management gets the good stuff now. She kicked the base of the machine. Rest of us get this broken bastard and a memo about cost cutting. I reached into my bag and pulled out a thermos, sliding it across the table. Black, 2 sugars, just how you like it. She unscrewed the cap, took a whiff, and groaned. You're a goddamn saint. Then, lowering her voice, Line 4 went down at midnight. Whole team's been scrambling. Daniel's been screaming at maintenance since 5 a.m. I sipped my own coffee, hiding a smile. Line 4 was my baby, a temperamental beast of a conveyor, system that only ran smoothly if you knew its quirks. And the binder full of those quirks? Currently sitting in my living room. Bet they've tried rebooting it, I said. Marlene barked a laugh. 6 times. Then the hydraulics blew. The break room door swung open, and Tyler Reeves, my replacement, stumbled in, his dress shirt already soaked with sweat. He looked about 12. Marlene, we need you on... His eyes landed on me, widened. You're not supposed to be here. I raised my thermos in a toast. Just visiting. He opened his mouth, then shut it when his radio crackled to life. Tyler, get your ass to line 4. Carter's losing it. Marlene stood, stretching with exaggerated slowness. Well, duty calls? She paused, glancing at me. You sticking around? I checked my watch. 7:30 a.m. Shareholder meeting at 9. Nah. Places to be 8:52 a.m. Dawson corporate offices. The boardroom was all glass and pretension, with a mahogany table so polished I could see my reflection in it. The other shareholders, 3 silver-haired men in identical navy suits, barely glanced up when I walked in. Then Victor entered behind me, carrying a briefcase and a shit-eating grin. Gentlemen, he said, meet your new majority stakeholder. The eye. Room went dead silent. I took the seat at the head of the table. 10:17 a.m., plant floor. Daniel was elbow deep in Line 4's control panel when the intercom buzzed. Daniel Carter to the executive office immediately. Repeat. Daniel Carter to... He didn't see me leaning against the railing above him, not until I cleared my throat. When he looked up, his face went through 5 emotions in 3 seconds. Confusion, recognition, dawning horror. Linda, he croaked. I held up my new keycard. Black with Linda Walsh, majority owner, embossed in gold. You're fired, I said. Happy Monday. The silence that followed my words was so thick I could practically hear Daniel's ego deflating. His mouth opened, then closed, like a fish gasping on dry land. Behind him, a wrench clattered to the floor as one of the mechanics stopped pretending not to listen. I turned on my heel and walked away, leaving Daniel rooted in place. He'd catch up eventually, probably right around the time security arrived to escort him out. The plant floor buzzed with a different energy now. Workers paused, mid-task, whispering behind hands as I passed. Some looked shocked. Others, the ones who'd been there as long as I had, grinned like they'd just won the lottery. Marlene intercepted me near the supply lockers, her arms crossed. You couldn't have waited 1 more hour? I had $20 riding on him. Crying. Check your phone, I said. Her brow furrowed as she pulled it out. A second later, her head snapped up. You're reinstating the old shift bonuses? Effective today. I plucked a spare radio from the charging station and clipped it to my belt. And tell the crew on line 3 their overtime pay's being backdated. Accounting's cutting. Checks this afternoon. Her laugh was sharp, triumphant. Oh, this is going to be good. 1:03 p.m. Executive office. The corner office still smelled like Daniel's overpriced cologne. I yanked open the windows, letting in the familiar scent of machine oil and hot metal from the plant below. His personal effects were already boxed. Up, photos of his golf trophies, a framed MBA degree, a stress ball shaped like a tiny briefcase. Victor leaned against the doorframe, watching as I dragged my old desk chair back in from the storage closet. Most people would have taken at least one day to gloat before diving into work. I'm not most people. I booted up the computer, pulling up the production reports from the weekend. Red warnings glared back at me. Line 4's. Shutdown had cascaded into delays across 3 departments. Daniel really screwed the pooch, huh? Victor sighed, loosening his tie. He tried to implement some efficiency algorithm he learned in business school. Cut maintenance checks by 40%, I snorted. And how'd that work out for him? About as well as you'd expect. He tossed a folder onto the desk. Speaking of, HR's already panicking. They want to know if you're planning a broader restructuring. I flipped open the folder. Inside was a list of every employee Daniel had pushed out over the past 6 months, seasoned workers replaced by cheaper, greener hires. At the bottom, someone had scribbled, P.S. Welcome back. I grabbed a pen. Tell HR to start making calls. 47 p.m. The phone call. My cell rang just as I was reviewing the safety logs. The number was blocked, but I knew who it was before. I answered. You bitch. Daniel's voice was raw, stripped of its usual smugness. You planned this. You set me up. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. Funny, that's exactly what I thought when you fired me on. My birthday. A choked sound on the other end. Then, quieter. You can't do this. I already did. I sat forward, clicking open the shareholder report on my screen. By the way, you might want to check your email. Severance package just went through. Though, I feigned surprise. Huh. Looks like it's half what mine was. Weird how that works. The line went dead. I dropped the phone onto the desk just as Marlene barged in, holding 2 coffees and a crumpled printout. You seeing this? She slapped the paper down, a frantic all-hands email from Daniel's favorite junior manager. Subject line, urgent. Who's in charge now? I took the coffee. Oh, this is just the beginning. 30 p.m., the walkout. The parking lot was still packed when I left, the night shift just rolling in. But instead of the usual tired grumbles, people stood straighter. Someone had propped open the break room windows, and laughter drifted out between the clatter of tools. At the gate, Pete gave me a salute. Heard you brought back the old holiday? Bonuses. Among other things. I handed him an envelope. That's for the security team. Hazard pay for putting up with Daniel's parking tantrums. He peeked inside, whistled. Damn, Walsh. You sure you weren't secretly a mob boss this whole time? I grinned. Stick around, might still surprise you. My phone buzzed as I reached my truck. Emily. Mom, what did you do? My LinkedIn is blowing up. I typed back, tell you over dinner. Your pick. Then I started the engine, rolled down the windows, and let the roar of the plant fade into the distance behind me. Tomorrow would be chaos, but for the first time in years, it'd be my chaos. Part 5. The First Domino Falls. The next morning, I arrived at Dawson Steelworks before sunrise, the gravel crunching under my boots as I crossed. The empty parking lot. The security booth was lit up. Pete already at his post with a fresh pot of coffee and a grin that told me the news had spread. Morning, boss, he said, sliding a clipboard toward me. Got a list of folks who showed up early. Think they're trying to impress you. I scanned the names, mostly veteran crew from the weld shop and maintenance team. The same people Daniel had pushed to the sidelines. Tell them I'll be on the floor in 10. Inside, the plant hummed with an energy I hadn't felt in years. Workers huddled near the time clocks, their conversations cutting off when I passed. Not out of fear, but something sharper. Anticipation. Marlene intercepted me near line 2, her coveralls streaked with fresh grease. You've got to see this. She dragged me to the production board, where someone had taped up Daniel's old efficiency metrics beside the new numbers from last night's shift. The difference was staggering, a 30% increase in output since the crew had gone back to the old protocols. Turns out, Marlene said dryly. People work faster when they're not terrified of being fired. I grabbed a marker and circled the numbers, then scrawled beneath them. Now, let's break records. 9:15 a.m. The boardroom revolt. The executive team sat stiffly around the conference table, their coffees untouched. Only Victor looked relaxed, flipping through a folder with a smirk. Let me get this straight, said Harris, the CFO, rubbing his temples. You want to roll back all of Carter's initiatives, increase labor costs, and reinvest last quarter's profits into equipment upgrades. I leaned forward. You forgot the part where we stopped treating our workers like disposable parts. A murmur. Around the table, the head of HR, a woman who'd rubber-stamped every one of Daniel's layoffs, cleared her throat. With respect, Linda, some of those changes were necessary for the stock price? I cut in. Funny. Because ours just dropped 12% after Daniel's streamlining made the news. I slid a tablet across the table, displaying yesterday's headlines. Dawson Steelworks grinds to halt after surprise leadership shakeup. Victor tapped his pen. Here's the choice. We either fix this now, or the next headline will be about our bankruptcy filing. The room fell silent. Then, one by one, the nods began. 3 p.m., the phone call that changed everything. I was elbow deep in Line 4's maintenance logs when my phone rang. Unknown number. Ms. Walsh? A woman's voice, crisp and professional. This is Eleanor Grayson, from North Star Industrial. We've been watching your situation with interest. I stiffened. North Star was Dawson's biggest competitor. If you're calling to gloat, you're about 6 months too late. A quiet laugh. Actually, we're calling to offer a partnership. We think there's room in this market for a different kind of company, one that values experience over spreadsheets. The proposal came fast. A merger that would keep Dawson intact, my team employed, and, most importantly, me at the helm. I stared. Out the office window at the plant floor below, where Marlene was demonstrating a repair technique to a group of young apprentices. Send me the terms, I said finally. But I have conditions. 5:45 p.m., the last surprise. Emily was waiting at my apartment when I got home, takeout containers already spread across the counter. She took one look at my face and froze. Oh my God, what did you do? I dropped the North Star proposal on the table beside the fried rice. How do you feel about being the heir to a steel empire? Her chopsticks clattered to the floor. Somewhere across town, Daniel Carter was probably drowning his sorrows in an overpriced martini. Meanwhile, I was just getting started. Part 6. The new era begins. The North Star merger papers sat unsigned on my desk for 3 days while I did something Daniel had never bothered with. I walked the floor and listened. The weld shop wanted new ventilators. Maintenance needed updated diagnostic tools. The night shift begged for something as simple as a functioning microwave in their break room. I scribbled every request into a battered notepad, the pages filling up faster than I could flip them. On the 4th morning, I arrived to find a crowd gathered around line 1. Marlene stood atop a crate, holding a blowtorch like a scepter. All right, maggots, who wants to learn how to fix this conveyor without shutting down production? A dozen hands shot up, including Tyler Reeves, the kid who'd replaced me. He caught me watching and flushed. I figured I should learn how. Things actually work. I tossed him a wrench. First lesson, never trust an algorithm to diagnose a hydraulic leak. I2. M. The signing. The North Star execs arrived in a fleet of black SUVs, their tailored suits glaringly out of place against the factory's grime. Eleanor Grayson, CEO and my unlikely ally, didn't flinch when grease stained her designer heels. Quite the operation you've got here, she murmured as we toured line 4. Wait till you see what we can do with proper funding, I said, and handed her a hard hat. The contract signing took place in the break room, the table sticky with coffee rings. I used Marlene's favorite screwdriver as a pen holder. When the last signature was in place, the crew erupted in applause, not for the merger, but for the clause guaranteeing no layoffs for 5 years. Eleanor leaned close as the cameras flashed. "Remind me never to cross you, Linda." I pocketed the yoy. "Pen? Smartest thing you've said all day." 30 p.m., the unexpected visitor. Daniel showed up as we were loading the last of his abandoned files into a dumpster. He looked hollowed out, his Rolex conspicuously absent. "You happy now?" he spat. "You got everything." I slammed the dumpster lid shut. "Not everything, just what was always ours." For a second, I thought he might swing at me. Then his shoulders slumped. They rescinded my MBA, said my management philosophy was, what was the word? Catastrophically negligent. Marlene snorted into her coffee. I fished a business card from my pocket. One of the welders was hiring for his auto shop. "Here's some free advice, Daniel. Try listening to the people who actually do the work." He stared at the card, like it was written in another language. Then, for the first time since I'd met him, Daniel Carter walked away without a comeback. p.m. The celebration. The crew transformed the loading dock into a makeshift party space, stringing up Christmas lights and hijacking a forklift to haul in kegs. Emily manned the grill, laughing as workers taught her their favorite shop floor insults in 3 languages. Victor sidled up beside me, watching Marlene arm wrestle a North Star VP. "You realize you've created a monster, right? These people are unstoppable now." I clinked my beer against his. Yeah, that was the point. Somewhere past midnight, as the last stragglers stumbled home, I found myself alone on the factory floor. The machines sat idle, their usual roar replaced by a contented hum. My phone buzzed. "Eleanor, already back in New York. Board approved your expansion plan. When can you break ground?" I ran a hand along Line 4's control panel, feeling the vibration of 1,000 shifts beneath my fingertips. "Monday," I typed, because some traditions were worth keeping. Part 7. Building the Future. The first shipment of new equipment arrived at dawn, the semi-trucks rumbling through the gates. As the morning shift clocked in, workers gathered around the loading dock, their breath visible in the crisp morning air. As the first pallets were unloaded, state-of-the-art laser cutters, upgraded hydraulic presses, and ventilation systems that didn't sound like dying animals. Marlene whistled as she inspected a crate. "Damn, we getting training wheels with these, or you trust us not to break them?" I tossed her the manifest. "Break them, then figure out how to fix them." The crew needed no further encouragement. By lunch, the weld shop had already commandeered one of the new plasma cutters, their laughter echoing as they tested its limits. 15 p.m. The unexpected alliance. Tyler Reeves cornered me near the break room, clutching a tablet like a shield. "I, made something." He pulled up a schematic, a streamlined workflow system that actually accounted for real-world delays like machine maintenance and human fatigue. It was shockingly good. I raised an eyebrow. "You steal this from someone?" He flushed. "No, I just asked the line crews what they needed." For the first time, I saw the kid Daniel had overlooked. Not a spreadsheet jockey, but someone who might actually learn. "Run it by Marlene's team. If they approve, we pilot it next week." Tyler's grin could have powered the whole plant. p.m. The call from the past. My ex-husband's name flashed on my phone as I was leaving. "Victor never called without a reason. Remember that shell company you used to buy, Dawson?" he said without preamble. "Turns out Daniel tried to sue it for fraudulent acquisition." I snorted. "Let me guess. The judge laughed him out of court." Worse. The court clerk recognized his name from the news and made him wait in the public gallery for 3 hours. I tipped my head back, laughing at the darkening sky. Justice came in small, satisfying doses. 30 p.m. The next step. Emily met me at the diner across from the plant, sliding into the booth with ink-stained hands. She'd been helping redesign the safety manuals. "So," she said, stealing a fry from my plate, "when do I get my own hard hat?" I pushed the blueprint toward her, the plans for Dawson's new training wing, complete with a welding lab and childcare center. "How's tomorrow sound?" Her eyes lit up. For the first time in years, I saw the little girl who'd once built toothpick bridges at my kitchen table. The future looked good in her hands. Part 8. The Ripple Effects. The training wing broke ground on a Thursday. The ceremonial shovel wielded not by me or some corporate suit, but by Rosa Mendez, a third-generation welder who'd trained half the shop. She drove the blade into the dirt with a force that sent the board members stumbling back, then tossed the shovel to her teenage daughter. "Your turn, Mija." The message was clear. This wasn't just a building. It was a legacy. By noon, the crew had already nicknamed it the Beast's Den, a place where future workers would learn to tame steel and egos alike. PM. The Unlikely Partnership. North Star's engineers arrived with clipboards and skepticism, expecting to school a bunch of factory rats. They left with grease stains on their Oxfords and a begrudging respect after Marlene's team demonstrated how to realign a laser calibrator using nothing but a wrench and a swear jar. Eleanor watched from the catwalk, her lips twitching. "Remind me to steal your people." "Try it," I said, nodding to where Rosa's daughter was explaining torque specs to a flustered Ivy Leaguer. "See what happens." 30 p.m. The Ghost of Failures. Past. A news alert popped up on my phone during inventory checks. Former Dawson Steelworks manager Daniel Carter arrested for drunk and disorderly conduct at golf club. Marlene peered over my shoulder and burst out laughing. Bet he tried to streamline the bartender. I deleted the notification. Some stories weren't worth finishing. 15 p.m. The Real Victory. Emily stayed late painting safety murals on the new wings. Bare walls, cartoon gears with faces, a dragon made of rivets. I found her asleep on a drop cloth. Rainbow paint streaked through her hair like battle colors. Careful not to wake her, I draped my jacket over her shoulders and killed the lights. Outside, the plant hummed through the night shift, alive in a way it hadn't been in decades. Not because of mergers or machines, because of people who finally mattered. Part 9. The Legacy Ignites. The scent of fresh welding smoke still hung in the training center when the first group of high school students arrived for their tour. Wide-eyed and hesitant, they clustered near the door until Mateo waved them. Over, his earlier nerves replaced with easy confidence. "Check this out," he said, striking an arc that sent sparks dancing across his boots. The kids erupted in cheers. Across the room, Eleanor Grayson stood with the superintendent, watching as Rosa demonstrated how to spot a weak joint. "You realize," Eleanor murmured, "this program just became our best recruitment tool?" I handed her a stack of applications from the kids' teachers. "We're not recruiting, we're building." 12:30 p.m. The Unexpected. Offer. Tyler intercepted me outside the cafeteria, his tablet clutched tight. "Got a minute?" He pulled up an email from MIT's engineering department, an invitation to lecture on shop floor innovation. "They want me," he said, disbelieving. I shrugged. "Better start practicing your punchlines. Academics love those." His grin faltered. "What if I'm not ready?" "Neither was I said, and left him with that. 45 p.m. The circle closes. Emily's. Mural was nearly finished when I found her. A sprawling timeline of Dawson Steelworks, from its founding to today. She'd painted the workers larger than the machines, their faces vivid under hard hats. In the corner, barely visible, was a tiny birthday cake with a knife through it. "Too subtle?" she asked, wiping paint from her hands. I hugged her, smearing primer on my shirt. "Just enough." 4 p.m., the last memo. The inner plant radio crackled as I locked my office. "Attention all shifts. Break room microwave officially fixed. Repeat, the beast lives." Cheers echoed down the halls. Outside, the parking lot glittered with frost under the security lights. Somewhere in the dark, a welding torch flared again. Someone working late, someone learning. I turned the key, leaving the light on for them. Part 10. The Unbroken Chain. The anniversary of my takeover arrived with no fanfare, just a sticky note on my desk from Marlene. "1 year since you went full godfather. Coffee's on you." I found the break room transformed. The crew had mounted Daniel's old efficiency metrics board to the wall as a dart target. Rosa pinned a new sign beneath it. Actual results, 47% faster since we fired the MBA. Even fall, the interns had the guts to laugh now. 10:15 am, the visitor. A limo pulled up to the security gate, not one of North Star's. Out stepped Charles Dawson, the founder's 89-year-old grandson. He hadn't visited since the buyout. Pete radioed ahead, nervous. "Old money incoming. Suit's probably worth more than line, but Charles only wanted one thing, to shake the hand of the woman who'd made the place breathe again." His grip was papery, but firm. "My grandfather would have liked you," he said, eyeing the bustling training center. "He always said steel's only as strong as the people who shape it." Then he asked for a hard hat and demanded a welding demo. 4 p.m., the ripple effect. Tyler's MIT lecture went viral, not for the technical details, but for the clip of him deadpanning. If your algorithm suggests cutting maintenance, to save money, your algorithm deserves to be thrown into a slag furnace. By afternoon, HR was swamped with resumes from Ivy League engineers begging to learn real work. Marlene taped the best one to the break room fridge. "Please let me touch the machines. I promise I'll stop calling people labor assets." PM, the fire that never dies. I drove home past the old diner where I'd cried over pancakes after my divorce. Now its neon sign reflected in the windows of Dawson's new childcare center, where third-shift moms clocked in without panic. My phone buzzed. Emily, sending a photo of her latest mural sketch, a phoenix rising from a birthday cake. "Too dramatic?" she asked. I replied with a screenshot of the stock price, up 200% since Daniel's departure. Just honest. Part 11. The Uninvited Storm. The first warning came as a vibration in the floor. I was reviewing blueprints for the new Midwest. Expansion when the tremor rattled my coffee cup. Across the plant, heads snapped up. 23 years in steel teaches you to recognize trouble before the alarms sound. Marlene burst into my office, her coveralls streaked with soot. "Tornado warning. They're saying it's headed straight for the old North Wing." The North Wing, where we stored the vintage presses Charles Dawson had insisted on preserving. Where Mateo's class was running their first unsupervised project. I grabbed the radio. "Evacuate to the storm shelters. Now." 18 p.m. The choice. The sky turned green as we herded the last trainees underground. That's when Tyler shouted over the wind, "The gas line! We didn't cap the—" A metallic scream cut him off. One of the original smokestacks swayed like a drunk giant. Rosa grabbed my arm. The vintage presses. I knew what she wasn't saying. Those machines were the soul of Dawson Steelworks, but the gas line ran beneath them. I made the call. "Let it go." The first funnel cloud touched down as we barred the shelter doors. By 7 p.m., the aftermath. Silence. We emerged to a war zone. The north wing was gone, just twisted steel and shattered concrete where the antique presses once stood. Mateo knelt in the debris, clutching a half-melted gear from his first successful weld. His shoulders shook. Then Charles Dawson limped through. The wreckage, his dress shoes crunching on broken glass. He picked up a mangled brass plate, Dawson & Sons 1946, and pressed it into Mateo's hands. "Now you understand," he rasped. "What we build is never truly lost." 7:30 p.m., the blueprint, by flashlight in the damaged cafeteria, I sketched on a napkin while the crew gathered. "New North Wing," I announced. "Twice as strong, with a storm cellar for the vintage gear we salvage." Emily snatched the pen and added a rooftop garden. For lunch breaks. Tyler proposed solar panels. Rosa demanded better tornado sirens. Marlene just grinned. "Hell, might as well make it hurricane-proof too. The insurance adjuster would have a stroke tomorrow." But tonight? Tonight, we rebuilt. Part 12. From Ashes, Steel. The Wrecking Ball. Swung at dawn, its brutal arc tearing through the last unstable walls of the north wing. But this time, the crew didn't watch in mourning. They cheered. Every collapse made room for what came next. Mateo and his classmates sifted through the debris, salvaging whatever could be saved. A bent piston here, a scorched gear there. Each piece cataloged and set aside for the memorial display Charles had insisted on. "History matters," he'd grumbled, "but not as much as the future." By noon, the first new I-beams were being hauled into place, their fresh metallic gleam a stark contrast to the soot-stained ruins. 9 p.m., the unexpected gift. A delivery truck arrived with no warning, its contents shrouded under a heavy tarp. The driver handed me an envelope with Eleanor's crisp handwriting, "For the phoenix rising from your ashes." We pulled back the covering to reveal a state-of-the-art hydraulic press, the same model North Star used in their flagship facilities. Taped to the side was a post-it note. "Try not to break this one. E." Marlene immediately called dibs on assembling it. "I'll make it sing," she promised, cracking her knuckles. 8 p.m., the first weld. The sun was dipping low when Rosa guided Mateo's hand for the ceremonial first weld on the new framework. His bead wasn't perfect, but it held. Charles Dawson, watching from his folding chair, nodded once. "That'll do." Then, to everyone's surprise, he stood, took the torch from Mateo, and laid down a seam so flawless the veteran welders applauded. "Forgot more than you lot ever knew," Marlene muttered, grinning. Topic time p.m. The light still on. I was the last to leave, as usual. The skeleton crew of night security waved as I passed through the gates. Behind me, the rising steel framework glowed under construction lights, alive with possibility. My phone buzzed, a text from Emily. "Finished the design for the memorial plaque. Wait till you see it." Attached was a sketch of twisted metal reborn into wings, soaring over the words, "What we build, builds us." I saved the image and looked back at the plant one more time. The light was still on in the training center. Someone was working late. Someone was always working now.